My name is Nancy Jones, and I'm here at the Hub to talk about a show that is currently up called Views of Nature. And I thought I'd give you just a little bit about my background. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where there are a lot of mountains and lakes and rivers and trees and farms very different, truck farms. So I spent my childhood in the 50s out in these fields and mountains and hiking, going down streams, catching crayfish and building tree houses and climbing trees. So my love of nature started very early. My educational background, I went to college at Case Western Reserve in Cleveland, then the University of Pittsburgh for my master's, and took classes at Carnegie Mellon as well. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is both the content of my work, which is always nature, which I fell in love with, I think as soon as I could see. But the material, the media that I used, or the mediums that I used, did change over time. One of the earliest was clay, as a matter of fact. Would dig up clay and make pots and put them on the furnace in our basement and fire them that way. And then at Western, I don't know, some of you will know Jack Cannon from Cannonball Pottery, so I helped make that big kiln at Western, Illinois. I did a lot of raku, built big rocks, because you can't get big rocks in Illinois, and built a fire pit and fired those. Took some Bernard Leach's courses in England, as a matter of fact. But since then, my media has been either watercolor or having moved to rural Macomb many years ago, more than 50. We happen to live out in the country where I actually have a good acre or more of a prairie garden. I have a husband who is an artist as well, who encourages me. So the combination of living in the country, different media, and always though, nature is the subject. We'll look at some of the works that are now hanging in the gallery. As you can see here, the views vary from a river, actually in Arkansas, to some mountains in Alaska, to some of the prairie plants in my backyard. And I think these illustrate the fact that I use different media. The left is definitely a watercolor. The two central ones, one is etching and the other is a lino cut. And in fact, the prairie flowers it's a lino cut as well, which took me a long time. All right, some of the images you can see in front of you, you will recognize. The far left happens to be a cornstalk done in pen and ink and watercolor. The next two in the central panel there are actually a lithograph that has been painted. And the one in the center is a view of Lake Argyle. The far right are, again, just prairie plants that I love. Those are totally pen and ink, which I think is a medium or a way of working that I often go back to. This is one of the very early works that I did at Emaquan, a large conservancy project along the Illinois River. I would say that I've been working on this project for 20 years. You will see later that I actually did a journal for 15 years that is now in the Illinois State Library. But this one, I think, indicates the transition that occurred. You can see the power plant in the back, the river, and then some of the atmospheric effects that the river brings. The set of works that you see in front of you are from Emaquan, and they were also done in I think, a rather unique way. They are not photographs, but they are based on photographic negatives that I have painted. I suppose that's not a new way of dealing with art, since many portraits were done that way in the past. But they have generated, I would say, the most comment that I have heard and feedback. And to be honest, I think they're very nice. The next two on the right are definitely plein air works, meaning I literally sat there on the ground painting them from start to finish. The three that you see in front of you with the dark brown mats were some of the earliest works that I did at Emaquan. In fact, just looking at them now, I see they were done in 2007. And then the coordinates are also marked at the bottom of the page. These are collages. I think they create an impact that is somewhat more, let's say, not emotional, but strong, because they were the earliest works I did where the landscape was changing rather dramatically. Today, the landscape does not change so dramatically. There are different kinds of issues, like with the carp in the river, but here the land was changing rather rapidly. And also, the tie to the Native Americans was very strong then. Some of the work that, not that you see on the wall, is actually on the 3rd or 4th floor of the Dixon Mounds Museum, part of the permanent display, some of which our names are attached to, and some of the work our names are not attached to. The small ones on the left were definitely plein air, again, done start to finish on the spot. The center one, I was at Lake Thompson at 4:30 in the morning to see the sunrise, and that is, again, both a photograph and a painting. And the far one on the right is from the mounds, looking down over the valley and trying to capture that sense of distance. This is an example of the journal that is in both the Illinois State Library and at Western, done on good paper, good quality paper, done with the encouragement of my husband, who I would like to thank. And you can just see one of the pages. I mean, these are, again, a collection of things that were mostly done on the spot as there were changes occurring in Emaquan over those, particularly the first 15 years. And it's too difficult to see them all, but some of the creatures, some of the changes in the land, some of the ways in which Lake Thompson changed. Okay, and lastly, I'd like to mention a plein air group that we call the Road Drawers, which is 30 years old. There were 4 of us who started it in Macomb, and it's still going strong. And what we do is, actually it was called the Road Drawers because we would go out in the car, stop the car, get out and draw. Now, we're a little bit older and we tend to plan it better, but you can see, for instance, this is a work, sketchbook from actually the Southwest. Spring Lake, Macomb. Not quite sure where this is from. Not too far from our backyard. And you can see that it has been written up in the newspapers over time. There we are at a cemetery drawing, and we did receive a grant from the state. Western Macomb has a museum called the Macomb Art Center, and this is a poster from the show when we had it at the Macomb Art Center, which, by the way, I was one of the founding members of that as well, at least on the original board. So lastly, I would like to just thank, again, my husband and mention our 2 sons. Reese, who lives in California, has we have 2 granddaughters there, and our son, Gareth, who lives here.